There's a moment in every great thinker's life when the ground beneath them crumbles, a moment that shakes their entire world. For Carl Jung, that moment came on a chilly autumn day when he made the painful decision to walk away from his mentor, Sigmund Freud. Freud had been like a father to him, a towering intellectual figure who had guided him through the early days of psychoanalysis. Jung was once seen as Freud's chosen heir, the one destined to carry the torch forward. But something inside Jung was stirring, something Freud refused to see. His closest confidant, a brilliant young psychologist named Michael, watched silently as Jung wrestled with a truth that set him apart from the rigid world Freud had built. Jung sensed a deeper force, not just the cold machinery of the mind, the trauma and repression Freud obsessed over, but a living, breathing soul pulsing beneath the surface of human consciousness. It whispered in dreams, it danced in shadows, and it called to Jung in moments of quiet solitude. When Jung tried to speak of this soul, Freud shut the door, not out of malice, but fear. Fear of the unknown, of mysteries that threatened to unravel everything they thought they knew. That rejection shattered Jung's world. The bond between them cracked and splintered. He felt the ground give way beneath his feet and found himself plunged into a storm of doubt, confusion, and isolation. For months, Jung withdrew from the world. He stopped seeing patients. He left behind the bustling cities and retreated to the peaceful shores of Lake Kusnacht in Switzerland. There, he walked for hours each day, grappling with the chaos swirling inside him. I had to dive deep, he wrote later in his journal, not just skim the surface like before. I had to go all the way down to the darkest depths of my own soul. And so began Jung's journey into the unknown, a descent into the raw, uncharted wilderness of the unconscious. It was terrifying. It was beautiful. It was the birth of a new understanding, one that would forever change psychology and the way we see ourselves. After Carl Jung took that bold step away from Freud and the world he once knew, he found himself standing alone on the edge of a vast and terrifying unknown. The retreat to Lake Kusnacht was not just a physical escape, it was the gateway to a journey that would forever change his soul. What followed was not the quiet peace one might expect, but a storm of visions and voices erupting from the depths of his unconscious. At first, it was subtle, strange dreams that clung to him like shadows at dusk. But soon, the images became vivid, almost too real to ignore. Jung saw rivers running red with blood long before the world plunged into the chaos of the Great War. He witnessed apocalyptic scenes filled with gods and demons, prophets and beasts. It was as if the very fabric of reality was unraveling within him. But unlike most, Jung didn't run from these haunting visions. Instead, he leaned in, embracing the chaos as if it were a fierce teacher. He put down his scientific texts and theories and picked up a pen. What poured onto the pages was not clinical notes or dry analysis, but something closer to sacred scripture. Pages filled with strange symbols, surreal images, and dialogues with figures that spoke to him from beyond the veil of consciousness. One day, a massive serpent rose from a dark well and whispered riddles that echoed deep within Jung's mind. Another time, a mysterious figure named Salomi appeared, not a temptress, but a blind woman who saw with her heart. And then came Fleiman, an old man with wings who did not lecture or command, but patiently guided Jung through the labyrinth of his soul. These weren't hallucinations or fantasies. To Jung, they were living, breathing parts of himself, psychic realities demanding attention. Each figure challenged him, revealed secrets, and forced him to confront fears he had long buried. This was no mere academic exercise. It was a sacred initiation, a spiritual descent into the shadowy depths of his own being. Jung was dying to the old self, shaped by Freud's rigid logic and emerging reborn, guided by these voices, images, and inner teachers. His journal would later call this method active imagination, a dialogue with the unconscious where Jung didn't just observe, but participated fully. It was terrifying, raw, and transformative. And this journey had only just begun. As Carl Jung's journey into the depths of his unconscious continued, he soon found himself face to face with the darkest, most terrifying part of his soul, the shadow. This wasn't a mere psychological concept. It was a living, breathing force within him, raw and untamed. It was the side he had hidden away, the anger, the jealousy, the fear, the desires he dared not admit even to himself. One chilling night, Jung dreamt he stood in a field drenched in blood, a sword clutched tightly in his hand, surrounded by the fallen, friends, family, strangers, all lifeless. But instead of sorrow, a strange power surged through him. That moment shook Jung to his core. Who was this shadow that could kill without remorse? Was he losing his mind? But this was the truth Jung had to face. The shadow was not an enemy to be fought or banished. It was a part of him, fierce, flawed, but essential. Beneath the polished facade of doctor, father, and scholar lay a wild, angry child screaming to be heard. This was the beginning of what Jung called individuation, the painful but necessary process of becoming whole by integrating all parts of the self. The shadow did not knock politely. It kicked down the door and stared Jung in the face, demanding recognition. It whispered brutal truths that Jung was not just the good man he had always portrayed, but a complex mix of light and dark, creation and destruction. To deny this was to live a half-life, fragmented and false. Jung's Red Book records chilling conversations with these dark figures, murderers, liars, beasts, all reflections of parts of himself he had long buried. One haunting vision showed him a chained man in a ruined temple, screaming the unbearable truth Jung refused to see. Most people would run from such revelations, but Jung stayed. He sat with the darkness, listened, and learned. The shadow became not his curse, but his key, a door to deeper truth and freedom. This is the paradox of the shadow. It is the enemy you must love, the dragon you must ride, not kill. Jung taught that true healing, true awakening, requires facing the beast inside with courage and compassion. And it is here, in this fiery crucible of inner conflict, that the journey toward wholeness truly begins. After wrestling with his shadow and embracing the chaos within, Carl Jung's inner world was far from quiet. It was during this turbulent time that two mysterious figures appeared: Salomi, the feminine soul, and Fleiman, the wise inner teacher. These encounters didn't just deepen Jung's journey, they transformed it. Salomi was unlike anything Jung had imagined. In the outer world, she might be known as a mythic temptress, the woman who danced for kings and demanded impossible sacrifices. But inside Jung's psyche, Salomi was not seductive or cruel. She was blind. Yet her blindness was a gift. It meant she saw with feeling, not sight. When she spoke, her voice carried a calm, profound knowing that shook Jung to his core. "I see you, even though I am blind," she said, piercing through the layers Jung had built around himself. This simple phrase cracked open a part of Jung that had been sealed tight for decades, the part that longed for tenderness, mystery, and surrender. Salomi embodied the anima, the unconscious feminine side of a man, representing intuition, emotion, vulnerability, and the chaotic beauty that logic tries to silence. Jung struggled with her presence. He wanted to control, to analyze, to reject. But Salomi was patient, teaching him that the feminine cannot be tamed. It must be honored and embraced. She appeared in many forms: a lover, a child, a serpent, a silent flame, always elusive, always inviting Jung deeper into himself. Just when Jung thought the storm inside might consume him, Fleiman arrived. A tall man with wings, a calm and ancient wisdom in his eyes, Fleiman was no ordinary guide. He didn't lecture or demand. Instead, he quietly led Jung to listen, to stop chasing knowledge and start receiving truth from within. "Your thoughts are not yours," Fleiman told him gently. "They come from the soul." This revelation changed everything. Jung realized the ego was not the creator, but the receiver. Fleiman became his inner compass, offering guidance through paradoxes and silence, challenging Jung to live not by logic, but by soul. Together, Salomi and Fleiman opened doors Jung never knew existed, doors to surrender, wisdom, and inner peace. The chaos began to make sense, and Jung was reborn, not just as a thinker, but as a man in communion with his deepest self. As Carl Jung journeyed deeper into the labyrinth of his soul, he encountered the ultimate challenge: the death of the ego. This wasn't a metaphor or a poetic idea. It was a profound, terrifying experience that shattered everything Jung thought he knew about himself. The ego, the identity he had built as a thinker, healer, father, and scholar, was no longer enough. It had to die for something greater to be born. One night, in a vision as vivid as waking life, Jung climbed a mountain and approached a throne carved from bone. As his hand reached out to claim the seat of power, the throne crumbled to dust. A voice echoed in the silence. "You were never meant to sit here. You were meant to fall." That moment broke Jung's spirit and pride, forcing him to confront the fragile illusion of control he had clung to his entire life. The ego had been a mask, a necessary one for survival, but ultimately a barrier to true wholeness. Jung realized that to become whole, he had to let go of this mask, surrender to emptiness, and embrace being nothing. "I must kill the hero in myself," he wrote. "I must become nothing, so I may finally see everything." In this space of total emptiness, Jung found a paradoxical peace. Not the easy peace of comfort or success, but the deep, raw peace of truth. It was the moment when the chase ended and the soul began to speak. The ego's death wasn't the end, but the beginning of spiritual rebirth. This rebirth didn't erase Jung's personality, but transformed it. The ego no longer ruled from the throne. Instead, it served the greater self, the eternal, evolving core beneath all masks. This process, known as individuation, is the sacred path of becoming fully human, embracing light and dark, strength and vulnerability, order and chaos. Jung's journey through ego death teaches us that the path to wholeness is painful and terrifying, but on the other side lies freedom. Freedom to be truly ourselves, unmasked and real. It is a death and rebirth that all who seek deep transformation must face. After the death of the ego, Carl Jung found himself in a strange new space, a place of silence where the mind stopped its endless chatter and the masks finally fell away. It was here, in this quiet emptiness, that Jung began to truly hear the voice of his soul, not as riddles or visions, but as a gentle, intimate presence speaking with honesty and grace. Jung called her my soul, as if addressing an old friend he had long neglected. The soul wasn't angry or dramatic. She was wounded, quiet, and deeply honest. She told Jung, "You have run from me your whole life. You built empires of the mind, but you never sat with me. You never asked what I feel." This was a heartbreaking confession, a moment of reckoning for Jung. No longer was Jung chasing external approval, knowledge, or control. He began to live in alignment with this inner voice, asking not, "What should I do?" but "What feels alive to me?" It was a transformation beyond psychology, a return home to the self. Throughout this profound journey, Jung documented everything in what would become known as the Red Book, a sacred, intensely personal volume filled with surreal paintings, mandalas, and handwritten reflections. Yet Jung never published this masterpiece. He locked it away, believing the world was not ready for its raw, mystical truths. 50 years after his death, the Red Book finally surfaced, revealing the true depth of Jung's inner voyage. It showed the world a side of Jung no one expected, not just a scholar or scientist, but a mystic who dared to stare into the abyss and return with a map for the soul. The Red Book's ultimate message is clear. True wholeness comes from facing your inner darkness, embracing your soul's voice, and accepting the painful, beautiful journey of transformation. It is not a book to be simply read, but to be lived. And now, the question Jung's story leaves us with is this: what will you do when your own Red Book begins? Will you dare to walk into the unknown within and meet the real you?